Guys, and welcome back to the Gulf Coast Grow Show. I'm your host, Jason Lee, with my co-host, Clint Aiken. We're excited to be in studio today at the Shell Studio here in the beautiful Deer Park, Texas. And we are joined by Senator Larry Taylor, District 11 here in Texas.
The legend.
The legend, on his farewell tour. So we're excited to be a part of that. Thankful that he can make a stop with us today, Senator, so we're glad to have you. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of his priorities kind of in this last 12 months that he's going to be in office. At the same time, a future forecast on where he thinks the vision or where we need to be going. Some of the work that's happening with the Gulf Coast Protection District. This is one of those kind of legacy events that you're going to kind of leave a footprint in that I think is going to impact our region for many years to come. And then we'll highlight some of the recognition or some of the great things that you've done during your tenure. I mean, that's a long time. You made a huge impact on our region. And I think daily, I've said this since I've got to know the state senators and the local politicians. I think you guys have by far have got one of the toughest jobs, because you got to wake up and have a day job and then turn around and serve your region. But you're also the most connected, I think, to everything that's happening around us, and we don't hear it on the news every day, right? But we take a lot of these things for granted until all of a sudden it's happening, and then we go, well, I'm really glad that was that way. And what we don't realize is guys like yourself have spent 20 years positioning us so that we would be protected from those things. And so really great to talk about that. I know you're passionate about education, a number of things, so thank you for joining us today.
No, my pleasure.
Why don't we start by this? Let's just again, for our audience that doesn't know you, maybe you could give us a quick recap who you are. Talk to us a little bit about your time, your tenure in office, what you've done, and then maybe really what this year looks like.
Okay. Well, I'm Larry Taylor, State Senator for Senate District 11, which encompasses almost all of Galveston except for Bolivar. Has northern part of Brazoria County, also includes Surfside, which is good for me, and the southeast Harris County. I actually have I don't have the battleship, but I have the battleground. So Battleground Road is the dividing line, and all those communities along the bay, Clear Lake, part of Pasadena, and all that. So I was in the Senate. I've been in the Senate. At the end of this term will be 10 years, and I was in the House 10 years before that, where I just represented part of Galveston County. And it's been an incredible ride. I consider it one of the greatest blessings I've ever had. My life before this, I was an insurance agent in Friendswood, Texas, and I really thought that's what my life was going to be. But God had a much bigger plan than what I had, and the experiences, the people I've met, the things I've been a part of getting done, is just, when I look back, it's just been an amazing ride. But like I've told people, every trail has an end.
Right.
And 20 years, it's been a great ride, but I'm looking for a little slower pace. And spend some more time with some grandkids, that kind of thing. I've got 4 grandkids and a 5th one on the way, and they're particularly special. And you only have a particular amount of time with them at certain ages, and you don't want to miss those things. So, anyway, I never knew I'd have this chapter in my life, and I know God has something else in store for the next chapter. Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but I'm looking forward to seeing what it is.
What a great thing. Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about the next 12 months. I mean, I can imagine, I know outside of your multiple award ceremonies that you're probably going to be attending, I know you've been stacking them up here in the last, and again, that speaks to your legacy. When you're not going to be at those events and you're not going to be doing podcasts and sharing stuff like that, behind the scenes, what are you focused on over the next 12 months?
Well, it's not 12 months now. I go through December, but I'm still on 2 state commissions. 2 bills I passed last session. One had to do with virtual education, what we went through with COVID. Mm-hmm. Right. And the experiences that we faced there. Of course, a lot of them were negative for a lot of our students, but there were some positives out there. And the idea of virtual education, using technology in education, is very important. And we're in the 21st century, right, and we really need to use that tool as an enhancement for all of our students. Mm-hmm. And before COVID, I was trying to get technology in the classroom. And we were promoting those things like blended learning that Pasadena ISD does, where they use technology in the classroom. The teachers are trained how to get the most, and not just use it as an electronic textbook, but use it as a device that really has benefits. And I'd seen that in action. So we've been kind of promoting that. In fact, we did a E-rate grant program through the feds. We passed a bill to get $25 million from we spent $25 million, and they multiplied it with Fed money. Nice. And that happened before COVID. Thank goodness, because by the time COVID hit, we had over 90+% of our school districts had broadband on campus.
Wow.
Before that, we didn't have that. So you can imagine COVID trying to do virtual without even having it on broadband on the campus. So those things were timely. But the virtual education, so what we want to do is, what are we doing for the future? One, we did not want to subsidize. Some of our schools, unfortunately, were keeping kids away from face-to-face. Probably 95% of our kids need face-to-face. They do much better in that environment, particularly younger ages. And we did, as a state, did not want to subsidize continuing promoting that for all of our students.
Right.
But we do understand that some students need it, and some students actually thrived in it.
Right.
So rather than just cut off funding for virtual education, we extended it for 2 more years to allow us to get through this interim till the next session. And we are paying for it, but we limited who's able to take it. You had to, if you did it before, you had to succeed in that. We don't want kids who failed in it the last 2 years to continue to go for another year.
Right.
So this was for kids who actually had done it and done well and passed. It was limited to 10% of your students, because we understood about 95% weren't doing well in that environment. So we had a number of limitations, but so we have the Virtual Education Commission that's working. Second commission on is community college finance. Now I was involved with House Bill 3, which is a public education school finance, which is very complex. We spent over a year working on that, prepare for House Bill 3. So community college finance, it's not quite as complex. Instead of having 1,200 school districts, we have 50 community college districts across the state. But still, there are things we need to do to modernize and update. Community colleges play such a critical role in economics. I mean, we've got to have skilled workers. Quickly. And the community college is one of the biggest providers of those kind of skilled workers. Right. And for those who want to go to college, it's a good way to start in that 4-year program. But so many of our jobs, they require just something beyond high school. I mean, like 95% of going forward requires something beyond high school, whether it's an associate's degree or certification, something like that. So those community colleges are the best place to get that. So we need to make sure we're meeting the requirements of the different types of students. They've got the traditional, what you think, kid coming out of high school, but we also have the dual credit, the kids that are in high school.
Yes.
And then we've got the older people coming back to get upskilled. Right. And those types of things. And they all have different needs.
Right.
And so how do we meet that? And how do we make sure our funding is there to make sure that we're not hindering some of our students from being able to take advantage of those opportunities? Right. So I'm on that community college finance. And to date, I'm still chairman of education. So I think we'll start our, after the primaries finished up yesterday, I think we'll start doing our interim charges. This is what we do every session. The legislature meets for 140 days every other year.
Right.
And odd years.
Except for last year, right?
Yeah. Regularly, we meet 140 days. Last year, unfortunately, was from January to about the latter half of October.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you real quick, special sessions are not special. As a legislator, during regular session, you can actually plan and schedule, because you're going to be there Monday through Thursday at the beginning of the session, Monday through Friday in the middle of the session. At the end, you're going to be there all week.
Right.
But you know that. Special sessions, you may meet on Sunday morning. You may meet on Tuesday. So you're basically blocked for 30 days.
Oh, wow.
And so when you have 3 special sessions with some breaks in the middle, and that's how you end up in October, but it literally blocks your whole schedule. You can't, you're canceling trips you'd plan with your family. You can't schedule business appointments because all of a sudden, no, we're going to meet on Tuesday. Wow. I thought we were going to, there's just no planning. So special sessions are particularly hard. Like I said, they're just not special. Irregular sessions, what I call them. So that's difficult. But anyway, during the 140-day regular sessions, so our interim was already shorted by 6 months, and then you get into elections. So we now have from now until December to do our interim studies for the next session, which comes up January 23. Now, of course, I will not be a part of that. I'm not running for re-election, so. But I'm still going to continue the job that I signed up for, that people elected me to do. I take this job very seriously, and I hope we can make some great strides for these things, be able to hand that off to the next legislative session and get these things passed and move forward.
Right. As a father, I really appreciate what you've done, because my daughter actually has done dual credit, and she's in the community college system right now.
Yeah.
So, and it's very strong. She's got a lot of awesome opportunities that are coming up for her. I know your daughter's in the system as well, so it's amazing to see the opportunities that you guys have opened up that I didn't have when I was younger.
Yeah. A lot of that's technology driven.
Sure, yeah. It's been awesome to see.
And that's why we need to really use more and more of that, not to replace face-to-face teachers, but as an enhancement tool, but also like self-paced, dual credit. Yeah, if your student, your child is doing well in certain things, they get it really quick, why are you slowing them down?
Yeah.
Right.
Let them go. Let them get some of those college credits out of the way and save on the college experience. Right. I mean, college is expensive.
Yeah.
And another thing, I think technology is going to lower the cost of college.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we've seen a lot of schools going over to virtual. You can get degrees online. Well, you can't charge as much for that as you charge for in person, room and board and all that kind of thing. So these are ways we keep people up to speed on education that is required for the jobs of the future. We don't even know what the jobs of the future are. As fast as technology is changing, we have an idea what they think they are.
Sure.
But the kids of today and these students of today have to continuously learn. Because 10 years, what was it, 10, 12 years ago, we didn't have an Apple iPhone. Mm-hmm. What is it going to be 10 years from now? Because that technology curve is accelerating at a more steeper rate all the time. So technology is coming faster and faster. So there's new technologies, new jobs. I mean, I hear people talk about influencers on social media. I never heard of that before. Really? You get paid to do that?
Yeah, you get paid to do that? Right.
So, I mean, there's just new things coming up, and we just have to keep our kids up to speed on those. And
Esports is another one of those, right?
Yeah, get a scholarship.
To play
video games.
I saw where somebody was getting a scholarship to go play esports at a college. I'm like, okay, I'm out of it. I hadn't played esports.
Yeah, mind-blowing stuff, but it is the future. It's where we're headed.
Yeah.
And I think I love what you're saying about that, because I think with the junior college system too, you can enable some of these kids to have a chance to, before they have to try to figure out what they're doing.
Right.
I think it's a lot to ask a kid at 18 years old which path they want to go in their life.
We all have different time frames.
Right.
We mature at different times. I mean, I have friends my age who still haven't matured, but there's, it's just different things. And it asks, like you say, an 18-year-old, like, what do you do the rest of your life? Well, I don't know.
Hey, who knows?
And so you send them off for a year, and they may graduate with a degree with all this debt. One, they may not be able to get a job with that thing that sounded like a good degree, but they may not even like it.
Right.
As they mature and grow. So it gives them time to kind of see things. And that's where I think our public education system needs to improve and giving people different opportunities to see different things.
Absolutely.
As far as what's out there. I mean, I grew up in Friendswood. I didn't know about all the jobs in maritime. Mm-hmm. And I should have. I mean, but I knew about NASA because a lot of my friends' parents worked at NASA and that kind of. But out in West Texas, very much an agricultural community, what do they know? They know agriculture.
Right.
But with today's technology, we can pipe in a NASA engineer to these schools, and they can talk about a problem they had in space and how they dealt with it and how they fixed it, what the engineering did. And you'll see the light bulbs going off all over the great state of Texas. So kids in West Texas suddenly are exposed to things they never would have been exposed to before. And go, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I want to do that.
And then they discover a passion that they never knew they had. And
Exactly.
that passion helps drive innovation.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And that's where I think the technology, we can have the very best and brightest of teachers teaching all over the state of Texas, not just geographically limited to being in that neighborhood. So
we are kind of an epicenter. I know the Tech Rodeo is going on this week. So
Tech Rodeo.
Yeah, Houston Tech Rodeo. So there's a lot of emerging technologies. A lot of people talking about the software, the hardware, the automation, all these different things that go into technology. So, but they wouldn't have that passion if it wasn't for some of the programs that we've helped develop.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, and I just tell you, my goal, I've been chairman of the education now for 4 sessions, 8 years. And, my goal and my passion, in the House, I'd never been on the education committee. Mm. I was asked to serve by Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst at the time, our first session in the Senate. And I went on there. And, I'm just kind of a fixer by nature. Around the House, if I see a problem on it, I just want to fix it. And just in general, if somebody shows me something, hey, we need to fix that in the city or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I got on that committee, and people's perspective of public education generally is based on their own experience, or if they have kids, what their kids experience.
Right.
And that's kind of what you know about public education. Wow, what an eye-opener when I got on that committee to see the whole state of Texas. It's not always the same. In fact, some cases dramatically different, in some cases not very good. And that bothered me, because I see these kids, they have all the same potential. They're born with the same brains. They had the same capabilities, but some of them just weren't getting the opportunities based on where their geographical area was.
Right.
Their zip code. And so that's something I just feel like, and I was also around the technology. We have the ability today to meet every child where they are with the needs that they have, and really customize it to make sure that every child, regardless of what their particular needs are, that we should meet them where they are. whether they do better in a virtual environment or they do better in a class.
They're an advanced student, or maybe
if they
less
need
than
more
advanced
help,
student.
if they need more help,
Yeah.
because some kids are good in one subject, not good in another. Well, let them go in the one they're good at, and then help them along with the other. And my goal has always been, let's get a good educational opportunity for every student in Texas, regardless of where they are. And that's kind of been my driving thing, is how do we meet the kids where they are and give them the opportunities they need? Because frankly, as a state, we need them. You know, this is one of the things I learned. Our largest demographic in Texas and our students is now kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch.
Wow.
60% of our student body qualifies for free and reduced lunch. That's also, not only is it our largest demographic, it's our fastest growing. And historically, it's been our least educated. So look at Texas 10 years from now. If that's already your largest demographic, it's the fastest growing, and it's the least educated. Where's Texas 10 years from now?
Right.
So I mean, it was a passion that we had to turn that around. We could not continue with the status quo. And we had schools that were doing very well with low-income students. And we had some that hadn't been doing well for a long, long time. So there were several things we implemented to try to turn that around. A through F system, one, to help identify where these schools are, how these campuses are doing, who are the high flyers. You got this type of demographic, you're doing really well. What are you doing? Okay, why don't you tell these other guys what you're doing? Let them figure out so they can email.
Right?
Yeah. Here's your best practices. And also you can find out who's not doing a good job. Even within big districts, we went down to campus level, A through F. So Houston ISD may be doing well overall because of its size, but then they had some campuses that have been failing for 8 years. Well, they've been able to hide that in the old system.
Right.
But if you're a parent of a child at that school, that's not acceptable. And once again, as a parent, you tend to be very optimistic about your kids. I can tell you a real quick example. Blanton Elementary up in Dallas, 80+% low-income students. They had done a survey of the parents, and the parents had an 86% positive impression of the school. They had been failing for like 4 or 5 years in a row. All except for the parents didn't know that.
Right.
Dallas ISD implemented a very innovative program. We call it teacher incentive allotment. They had another term for it, but they actually identified their best teachers, and they paid them more money if they would work in a more challenging campus like Blanton. Because what happens traditionally, when somebody graduates their teaching degree, ready to go to work, guess where the jobs are open? At the most challenging campuses.
Right.
Because everybody goes there for a while, then they go to where it's easier.
Right.
I mean, it's just human nature.
Sure.
Dallas paid the best teachers who were proven better, paid them even more money to go to this. Within 3 years, Blanton Elementary, 80+% low income, was at the same level of attainment as Highland Park Elementary. I don't know if you've heard of Highland Park, one of the wealthiest districts, one of the wealthiest campuses in Texas. And
that's amazing.
And they were right there with it. So I'm saying, well, these kids had the same capabilities, but they're not getting the same inputs. And you got to give them a good teacher.
Right.
And so when they did it, so I see that as a program, we got to take that statewide, because we're facing that same problem that Dallas ISD was facing in the whole state. So we part of House Bill 3, put in teacher incentive allotment.
And as we get ready to pivot, I think that's a great point, because we get encapsulated in our own little world, you know, and I'm always talking to people about actively getting involved with organizations like this organization, getting to know senators like yourself so they can hear those stories, because we don't realize this, but you know, we might complain about taxes or things of that nature, but because we're frustrated because perhaps a certain part of our demographic is getting taxed more or having to carry these challenges, but it's a byproduct of not leveling that playing field. It's a byproduct of not pouring into schools like we just talked about. If we continue to see that happen, you're going to continue to have people who are going to struggle to get the career-paying jobs or the career-paying opportunities, and then they end up in challenging situations, which again we just repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. If you don't start with the kids, you're not going to change the next generation.
Well, if I could clarify that, each of those students of that 60% today, every one of those kids that you give a good education and give them a good job, guess what? They're not going to be in that. Their children are not going to be in that demographic.
They won't.
So you're talking about changing family trees. So when I talk about these students, I'm not just seeing students, I'm seeing the future family tree. If you don't give them an education, guess where their kids are going to be?
Same exact spot.
They're going to be right back. So that 6% continues growing. The only way you turn that around is by giving them a good education, and then their kids aren't there, and then you bring it back the other direction.
We're talking about generational change.
It's generational change. This is not about just changing a student. It's about their future and their kids' future and their grandkids' future.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to you and the work that you guys have done. I know you got another big project, the Gulf Coast Protection District, GCPD. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, this kind of first started after Hurricane Ike. If you remember the devastation we faced, the storm surge.
Yeah.
And frankly, Hurricane Ike was a near miss. What you saw was a near miss. It could have been far worse. Hurricane Ike was coming. If you look at Galveston Island, I don't know how you do this with your camera, but it was headed for the southern end of Galveston Island. And so that you have the messy side of the storm is on the east side. It was coming that way, and at the last bit, it kind of veered and went where the eye went right up the ship channel.
Right.
Now, you have to understand that the messy side, that storm surge, right there where that ship channel is, it's 40 feet deep. And it goes up into a very shallow bay. I'm a surfer. What happens when a pulse of water hits shallow water? It jacks up and makes a wave.
Great waves.
Great waves, which I particularly enjoy. But Galveston Bay is a very shallow bay. So here's this 40-foot channel. If that storm surge would have come straight up that channel, where it did go was over Bolivar Peninsula. Remember seeing the pictures of Bolivar? Looked like a bomb went off?
Right.
But that was a near miss. So that storm surge had to go over Bolivar, so it took a lot of the punch out of it. If that thing had gone up there unobstructed at the ship channel, I think the Fed spent $30 billion in Hurricane Ike cleanup. It could have easily been 60, 80, because
My Lord.
Hurricane Ike was a level 2, category 2 storm. It had like a level 4 storm surge because of how long it took to get there and the push behind it. So it was a larger storm surge than a normal category 2. But that was a near miss. But we're going to have another one.
Right.
But anyway, Dr. Merrill down at Texas A&M Galveston had looked at it after that. He'd survived going through that storm, actually down on the Strand, and started visiting with people in Holland. Holland, over half their country is below sea level.
Oh, wow.
And they deal with this stuff, and they've been working on these kinds of things. You see the windmills? You know what those windmills are? They're water pumps.
Wow.
That's what those, But they've got levees. They've been working on this kind of an issue for a while, and they had a big major event in 1950 that wiped out a lot of people, and so they've been working on this. They're ahead of us on that. But anyway, he started working on that idea. The idea is let's stop the surge at the coast. That's your shortest line, right? Rather than trying to go up in the bay and build all these different levees, let's stop it here. The main component of that is a gate across the ship channel. Here's this 40-foot deep ship channel. If you can have it open all the time when ships are going, but then when the storm is coming, close that thing up, keep the storm surge out there.
Nice.
And that idea has caught on. I saw it immediately because my family was here in the 1900 storm in Galveston.
Oh, wow.
I lost family members. I have family stories of people surviving in trees going across the bay, babies being put on top of dressers on second floors and surviving the storm. So, I mean, my family feels that. But look what they did after the 1900 storm. They built that seawall, and it's still there today. Over 100 years later, still doing the job they built it for. It's an amazing thing. And I'm thinking, we've always just had to batten down the hatch. Here comes another hurricane. Everybody, but here's something we could actually be proactive and do something about it. Now, it's a huge project. It'll be the largest Army Corps project they've ever done.
Wow.
And they've already started. It's the coastal spine.
Yeah,
right?
it's coastal spine, coastal barrier.
Started like I've referred to it as the bookends.
Exactly.
Right?
Sabine to Galveston is actually Freeport and the other side,
right.
Jefferson County and Orange County, and they're building stuff there. And we gave them money to help do that from the state level. I mean, over 2 sessions, we gave them $400 million.
Wow.
To keep those projects. You have to understand the Army Corps works on a priority basis. When your number comes up, you better be ready. Otherwise, you're going back to the back. They've got hundreds of projects.
Yeah.
Right.
But they've been working on this project with us to try to get all the design work done, and we're now there. We're about to get the final approval on this thing from the Army.
How many jobs do you think that's going to create?
Well, it's jobs, construction, obviously, and it's going to take a while to build it. I don't really know the number, but then we have to maintain it. Right. So there'll be some job. But this really isn't about the jobs building it. Okay. This is about the jobs you're protecting behind it.
Okay. Right.
Think of all the industry we have here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Think of all the people that live here. And of course, this is a huge, not just for our region. What this port region means for our state and for our country. I mean, we had Harvey, right? It was a rain event. Our port was closed for like 4 or 5 days. Gas prices went up dramatically on the East Coast during that 4 or 5 days because we weren't processing and shipping fuel. Imagine if this place was hit by a direct hit from a major storm and we're out for 6 months, 8 months. What would that do to this country's economy? And then you find out we produce like 80% of the nation's military aviation fuel. That's a national security risk. If we don't have the aviation fuel for our military, and some bad guys like right now want to start doing something, what better time for them to pick them while we're down, trying to put our stuff back together.
Wow.
So this is a huge impact, not just for us, but for this whole country. And that's why we go to Washington, D.C., we help sell this. Not only that, the people that provide feedstock to us and the people we provide stuff back to are in all these other states. If we're shut down, guess who else is shut down?
The rest of them.
There's nobody to send it to, and there's nobody for us to send it to.
Right.
I mean, they can't get what we need to send them, so they're shut down. So this is a big national impact. And so the Army Corps is in on this deal. I mean, they can't push politically, obviously, but they get it. They want to build this project. You know, my goal, the normal way of Army Corps processes and projects is you get annual appropriations. If we do it that way, this thing's going to take 20 years to build or longer. Because you got to compete every year to get your, and if they don't get the funding that year, you just sit there and wait for the next one. We get on average hit about every 8 years. This isn't a matter of if we get hit again. It's when and how many.
Right.
And so if we take 20 years to build it, they'll have to repair some of the stuff they've already built because it wasn't done. I mean, this could just be an ongoing deal. What we need is direct appropriation from Congress. And my personal perspective, start with a gate. You know, we've got some natural barrier islands that, you know, even if you don't have that, we already have the seawall. We have, you know, dunes and that kind of thing. No, they're not as good as what we're going to build, but it still takes the punch out of it. So yeah, it would override that, but it's still not the same as that 40-foot deep channel where the storms are pushing up in there. That is probably somewhere in the 10 to 12 billion range. And real quick, let me put it in perspective. Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans, remember that was all over TV and all that? The Fed spent like $16 billion and had it done in 4 years.
I know Lake Charles is still suffering from Laura.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's
but Congress gave them the project, said you build this and build it in 4 years. And they gave them money. So it's a direct appropriation, and they've gotten it done. And then they went back and finished up some environmental studies after the fact.
Wow.
But they got it done. New Orleans has a fraction of the population we have here. They have a fraction of the economic input to this country that we have. So the difference was theirs was on TV. Ours happened right before the financial collapse in 2008. So it was almost like a forgotten storm. But I think we've got enough information and stuff out there to get this. I'm going to be back with the Economic Alliance. I think in April we're going to go back up there. We've been there numerous times. So what we did last session, we passed the Gulf Coast Protection District. You have to have a non-federal local sponsor that they work with. And we have that in place. The members have all been appointed by Lieutenant Governor, Governor, and Speaker. And their work, they've been meeting for a couple months.
Great.
And they're being prepared. Because what happens is, we have to share 35% of the cost. We have to pay within 30 years after completion. So that's out there. But then we're also going to be in charge of maintenance of it. So once it's built, we have to maintain it. So they're working through all those issues. There's some alternative ways of financing those kind of things. But we've got that approved through the legislature. So we have that district. It's going to come up for a vote for everybody in this. It's a 5-county district. And so we need people to vote for that district because that's what it's going to take to protect us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this goes back to, having just voted, there's when you go through your votes, you see all the different things that they are looking at from a party perspective and all the different things that matter or relevant. And it's interesting, before I got with this organization, and not just this organization, but getting plugged into so many things, I think there's half that stuff I wouldn't have been cognizant of or had not paid attention to. So again, this is a reminder, if you're paying attention to the show, or get plugged in and start to understand what's happening locally and regionally, because when that bill shows up or that thing shows up and there's a vote for it, you need to know what it is. It's important to be cognizant of those things.
You need to make sure that your politicians that that stay there for you, they understand that you know what it's about and that they're voting for it.
Yeah, track them down, find out, and get involved. And just like you're speaking to us today, and we have multiple people come on the show. That's the purpose of the show, so people can hear your voice. But you got to get plugged in. You got to take a progressive approach, not just wake up on election day, go down and just straight line it across the board. You got to be connected to know what's happening going on.
Bottom line, we are blessed to live in a country where we get to govern ourselves.
Amen.
A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the question is, who can screw it up? The people.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not informed of what's going on, if you allow people to get into office that shouldn't be in there, you sit around and complain about it if you didn't take part in it and try to, one, be informed before you vote. You know, this idea we want everybody to vote, I really don't. I would rather have informed people vote than just have people show them, well, I like the color of that sign. That was a good looking, you know, what?
What?
You're making political decisions based on...
He's got the first name that I have.
Or the 5 people who tax you in the parking lot on your way in, and you're like, well, I guess I'll vote for you.
Or that was a great 30-second commercial. Everything they said sounded so good. Well, you know what? Politics is more complicated than that. And I get frustrated with that because I'm in it, right?
Right.
I'm in the policy, and somebody will say something that sounds good. I go, wait, have you thought about that?
Right.
I mean, let's go back to this last election. We had people saying, let's get rid of the property taxes. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, first of all, the state doesn't get property taxes. That's local. That's how locals pay for police, fire, water treatment. There are some towns that don't have a lot of sales tax. So what would their rate be if you're not going to have property taxes? If you're in a town that has a stable population, not a lot of business, and you're going to raise your sales tax to 20%, who's going to buy stuff in that town? When they go next door and buy it where they've got more interest in, they don't have that. I mean, it doesn't work. It sounds good. But these are things that, you know, people with populist messages and saying, everybody goes, oh, yeah, that's great. We might as well be voting for more tooth fairies. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I've been on at least 3 different studies on that property tax issue, from the Conservative Coalition, Texas Public Policy. I mean, several serious efforts to try to do that. And by the time you get down to the nitty-gritty, it doesn't work.
And y'all done a lot of work to restructure it anyway.
Oh, well, we've worked on property taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what you kind of act like you hear this, so we've compressed it on schools.
Yeah.
Your school taxes can't go up more than 2.5%. We cut it about 13 cents to start with, and from now on, it can't go up more than 2.5%. The state's making up the difference. So it's a huge investment on the states, but no one talked about that during the campaign.
You know, and I think
those are frustrating things to me. I'm like,
I think when you think regionally and locally, you can start to see with that perspective, because these are your schools. These are the things that are right in your neighborhood, like you just talked about. The police. I mean, let's be clear. We pick and choose these neighborhoods we choose to live in, and if I choose to pick that area, I choose to pay more to be there for a reason, because I know that the school district's good. I know that the police are good. I know that the mayor is good, and you kind of think about that, and then you start thinking about if everyone's rushing to Texas to try to live here, we must be doing something right.
Well, so, that's kind of
that whole
when people complain about what's going on.
Don't fix what's not broke.
Yeah.
You know, you start trying to think when it comes to that.
I could give you a whole bunch of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more quick one.
One more quick
That
one.
sounds like a good podcast.
This idea that we shouldn't have minority party chairmen, where do they do that? They do that in D.C. Who thinks D.C. is working? Anybody? I mean, do they get anything done? But in Texas, we do have some minority party members as chairman. Guess what? They're all in the game, and we get stuff done in Texas.
Absolutely.
And we have a history of getting stuff done. So why do you want to mess with that? Because what happens if you take them all the way out of the game, there's nothing left to do but roll in grenades and toss stuff in. They're not a part of the process. But if you keep them as part of the process, and I also learned this is a big state. We have all big different backgrounds. It's worth listening to people before you just run over and do something.
There's more to agree on than just
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you call them? Ineffective sessions or not?
Irregular sessions. Yeah, we have a lot of irregular sessions.
So if you were to, the regular sessions would be through the roof. You know, they really would if there wasn't as much of a. That's what it would be a fight all the time. You know,
on every issue.
Yeah.
Which is what you see in D.C. So I'm sitting there thinking, why would you want it? But no, people don't think through that. They just think, yeah, well, that doesn't make sense. But the fact is, that doesn't work. We have a perfect example of that looking at D.C. And I have no desire to ever be a part of something like that.
Well, and if you think about it, we see it played out here regionally with the collaborative efforts with both parties, and because you have a lot of people representing both sides, but when it comes to getting stuff done here in Texas, they can typically collaborate in a lot better fashion. Things like this things like the school. People, you know, at the last Economic Alliance banquet, you were there. You know, you got people from both sides representing, but both with a cordial mindset and approaching things from a cordial
Working
perspective.
together for the region
with Texas.
With differences of opinion. But, I mean, I ask this question all the time to audiences. How many of you agree with your spouse 100% of the time? And they laugh. And you expect to agree with me 100% of the time? I mean, come on. By the same token, but you still have to listen to different inputs. The Bible talks about wise counsel comes from many counsels.
Amen.
those people aren't of the same opinion giving you the same counsel. You get counsel from different opinions, and you build a much better picture of what's really going on. And then you figure out, if I do this, here's how it's going to affect. Okay, well, we don't want to do it. Let's do this. And you end up with a much better product at the end of the day by listening to people and working with them to craft it together, rather than just running over people. Find out later, we call them unintended consequences. When you don't listen and you pass these things, you find out, well, here's what happened here. And sometimes you get the absolute opposite effect of what you're trying to do, which happens a lot in D.C., because they didn't listen. And it's just important to take in all those different perspectives. You end up with a better decision and better for Texas.
A lot of wisdom in this show today. We're excited. I love how fired up you are. And in case my wife's listening, I do actually agree with her on everything she says.
So yeah. Check that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure so that goes for all of us. So I might not initially, but when it gets done, we always end with the same response. Okay, honey. So last thing as we get ready to wrap up, let's talk about accomplishments. I mean, you kind of were already weaving some of those into this discussion, but I mean, you've really had a long run, a monumental run. There is a reason why you're getting these awards and why people are wanting to celebrate you on this kind of last lap around, which has just been something of a gift to us all. Perhaps you can just highlight a couple of things that you're most proud of.
Well, probably the biggest thing that I'm probably most well known for in recent times is House Bill 3, which was an education finance reform. It was also more than just finance. It was an education reform. I talked about teacher incentive a lot. We changed things, putting things like college, career, military ready bonuses. Rather than paying, we pay schools based on the type of student that they have, because the school doesn't pick their students, but we're actually paying them to do something with those students. If you get those kids, if they're low-income students, you get them college, career, military ready, we're giving you a bonus like $5,000.
It's fantastic.
Per student.
Wow.
So talk about incentivizing people to do something with those students. So that's a thing you hear a lot about. But some of the other things, my very first session ended up on tort reform. We were having mold crisis where you couldn't buy and sell houses because there was this whole thing with litigation going on with mold. I was involved with that. Work comp in 2005. Created some new health plans in 2007, the consumer choice plan. It didn't have all the mandates, so it was a low-cost health plan. I worked on this last session with commercial vehicle litigation reform. We were losing shippers. They couldn't get insurance. The insurance was going through the roof. Well, guess what? Every product we consume is shipped at some point. And if there's not enough shippers, what happens to the price of the things we pay? That's going to take 2 or 3 years for that to work through the experiences of the insurance companies, see the experience go down so they can lower their costs. But that had to be done. Things that I was really honored to be a part of, like when Hurricane Ike hit. We talked about Hurricane UTMB. The first medical school in Texas is on the island, and they have a level 4 biohazard containment lab. They were trying to move that to Austin for fear of the next storm, and so I was there to help. No, we're not doing that. We've got these resources that are here. The capital and investments have already been made. You're going to start all over. So we're able to keep that here. Awesome. A smaller thing, but kind of in this area, the battleship. I'm sitting in the finance committee, and they were like talking about, we got to quit doing this. We're spending $25 million here, and I said, wait. And I went through the whole story of the battleship, how it was paid for by the students of Texas with their nickels and dimes. And that's how we bought that ship. And that's how it ended up where it is. And it's not going to sink under my watch. And people bought into that. And we put in the money to do it. And we've since had to do it again. Now they're working on actually redoing the bottom. But things like that people probably won't ever remember. But to me, that's meaningful to be a part of that.
They are meaningful. Yeah, they're signature moments.
But this Gulf Coast Protection District, this is one of the things is the school finance reform stuff and the school reforms. They'll be talking about this again 20 years from now. But that Gulf Coast Protection District, they will be so thankful we had it 80 years from now. And they won't remember who did anything with it, how it happened, but they'll be so glad it was there.
We'll make sure someone graffitis your name on it.
Maybe I'll go put my hand printers on it.
100%. We have to. Absolutely.
But those are the things.
We need like a statue of you there, right there where the storm surge comes in, with like a sword and a shield.
Both hands out. Both hands out, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Or a finger in the hole of the dike.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, Larry. That's amazing. All right, well, hey, we really appreciate you being out here today.
Thank you very much.
We've had you on before, but one of the most humble, sincere, kind men and really with all the local legislators, it really is the people who give back and serve our community. It takes so much sacrifice. I don't know how many. I mean, I can't even imagine what last year with that special session would do to a person's years. It would chip away at them pretty tough. We think our jobs are hard, but I mean, that's nonstop, constant commitment to your community, and then you're getting it from all different sides, right? From politics to people to locally to regionally, and then probably your family when you have to call and say, hey, I can't make that vacation. That's probably pretty tough, and so we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
A lot of sacrifice.
Well, thank
a lot
you.
of sacrifice.
Like I said, it's been an incredible blessing that I was able to do this. But I'm ready for a little slower pace.
Yeah, we've been blessed to have you. So, and folks, if you have the opportunity and you can track down Senator Taylor and he's in your district or in your region, make sure you guys send him a note and or show up to one of his any of the events locally where he might be at for the next things. And make sure you acknowledge that because he's just been a gift to us. So, and we, as always, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. We would also want to encourage you, take this episode, pay it forward and put it in someone's hand. Let's get people connected. With it being an election year, it's a great time to get connected, get plugged in, find out who's going to be serving your region and in that race, and try to get connected, try to find out, ask them questions, and or plug in and ask us questions. What matters? What things are going to affect you and impact you here regionally? And we can try to get you some answers and try to team up with you to make sure that you stay informed and educated. You can contact Clint and I on LinkedIn anytime, and you can contact the organization at allianceportregion.com and subscribe to any of our channels to stay tuned into the podcast. And for that, we want to thank you, and we'll see you next week.